Welcome back to All the Gear. Today on All the Gear, I'm taking you on a journey from wash through distillation and polishing of a neutral spirit or vodka that you can make yourself at home. In this video, we're going to explore 3 different still configurations, from a beginner's still configuration all the way through to an advanced still configuration, trying to provide you insight into and demonstrate the difference between an entry-level homebrew still and an advanced configuration that gets you closer and closer to azeotrope or 96% alcohol. 95.5. That's crazy. That's 0.5 off azeotrope. The idea in this video is not to indoctrinate you into any single still style, but to give you options that will inform you on your distilling journey going forward. So it's time to start at the beginning, which is our wash. We have multiple options here. For these 2 fermenters, I'm going to be making up a sugar wash. The reason I'm making a sugar wash is because I want to make the worst case scenario a turbo wash, essentially. I want to see if I can strip out all of the off flavors in that wash. Now, high alcohol isn't necessarily good. It can stress the yeasts out and just cause them to essentially explode. There's a lot of negatives, but they are extremely efficient. So if we can get rid of all the off flavors through a very advanced still configuration, it doesn't really matter. The wash, I think, deserves its very own video, so I'm not going to get too deep into the options we have available here. We're just going to be using a turbo, and if you're not a turbo fan, that's absolutely fine. You can just substitute out your favored wash. So we're going to be using 20 liters of hot water. So I added in 16 kilograms of sugar to each of the fermenters and topped up to 50 liters with cold water, which is our final volume, bringing the temperature of the wash up to about 30 degrees Celsius. So we're going to add in the Impresence Turbo yeast, which is a yeast that Kegland's been developing and I've been testing for them. You can substitute out the turbo yeasts that are available to you, be they still spirits, Alcotech, etc. Just follow their instructions on their packs. I then left these to ferment. Turbo is generally 3 to 7 days. However, I actually left these for 2 months because I wanted them to clear naturally on their own. Okay, so we've got our fermenters up a strength of about 13.5%, which is really good. A key factor in getting a clean spirit at the end is to make sure that your washes are clear. There are multiple ways to do this. You can use fining agents, which you add in and clear the wash. Substances like bentonite, or you can cold crash your wash, put it into a fridge, the yeast and particulate cold crash out of the solution. Or you can do it as I've done it, and I've just left the wash to fully ferment, and it's been a couple of months actually since I put these washes down, which means that they've cleared naturally. If I take a sample of one of these washes, you can see that the wash is extremely clear. You've got a yellow tinge to it, but there's no particulate, no yeast floating in solution. And this is what you want to achieve. You want to get as clear of a wash as possible. All of the yeast and particulate has dropped to the bottom of our wash, and we have a nice clear wash to work with. Okay, so we're now going to take our wash and we're going to add it to our still to do a stripping run. A stripping run is essentially stripping out all the alcohol, not really making any cuts, not being super careful, taking the bulk alcohol and discarding the wash so that we can do a spirit run afterwards. Okay, so for the distillation of our washes that we've created, there are a few options moving forward. You've got multiple different still configurations that you can consider. So what I'm going to do in this next section of the video is I'm going to run through 2 stripping runs and a spirit run for the washes that we've created, and I'm going to demonstrate the different configurations of stills that you can use, ranging from an entry-level beginner's still, which will produce a reasonable result, to an advanced custom still that will produce just shy of azeotrope. So we're going to do a stripping run with an Alcoengine T500 equivalent that most people will have access to. We're going to do a stripping run with a copper plate still, and we're going to do a final spirit run with an SPP packed modular 1 meter column still. Now, if you are using any one of these techniques, you would just do a stripping run with the still that you have available and then do a spirit run with the same still. You obviously don't need all three of these stills to do what we're doing today. You will just use the still you have available to do the stripping run and the spirit run. I'm just showing you the options so that you can be better informed in your purchases going forward. Let's start with our entry-level reflux that everyone will have access to. So this is the Alcoengine copper reflux still. In the column, it is packed with a stainless steel mesh, and the actual still itself is made of copper. So you have the copper interaction as well as the stainless steel mesh causing reflux all up the column because it is already pre-packed with the substrate. So let's fill up our boiler with the washers that we've created, and I'll show you how this still works. So this is the Digiboil. As you can see on the bottom, it doesn't have any exposed elements. It heats from the bottom. So I do really like these boilers because they're really easy to clean. So it's always a good idea to add in something like a distilling conditioner or just a knob of butter to break the surface tension on the top of the water, which will reduce puking. So I'm just gonna add in a knob of butter like that. Okay, so here I have 40 liters of wash in it. I've just left a bit of headroom, and I'm just gonna add on my still head. This is the Alcoengine copper reflux still head. We're just gonna clamp that down. Okay, so I'm gonna start the boil. So to do that, I'm just gonna flick the still on. We can put it on all elements right now. And this has a max output of 3,500 watts. To measure the temperature, there is a point for a thermometer probe that will just go into there. That's going to measure the temperature at the collection point of our still. But what I'm looking to do here is I'm going to set an alarm on my thermometer for about 50 degrees. That's going to give me forewarning that the distill is about to start because as the temperature rises through the head, the alarm will trigger, I'll be notified, and then I can start to manage my water. I'll show you how to connect up the water now. So water management on stills like these is done through these two quick connect nipples. All you're doing is just pushing as much water as your tap will allow through it, and it automatically manages the water essentially. Not all of the consumer reflux stills are like this, but the Alcoengine is. You just put as much pressure as your house will allow through that, and it restricts it to the perfect amount. Connect up the water. It doesn't matter which way, both ways work equally well. And if you really like, this fitting is really useful. It's just a quick connect with a ball valve in it. And that will allow you to change the flow if you really want to. On these stills, there is also an interchangeable part here. It's essentially a flow restriction. So you can see the hole in this flow restriction dictates how much spirit comes out of the still. The smaller hole fitting lets less spirit out, but it's at a higher percent, and the larger one is for stripping. So for your stripping run, you would use your larger hold fitting, and then for your spirit run, you would use your smaller hold fitting. Or you can actually restrict it with this tap as well. We're probably gonna leave this alone because it is a stripping run. I'm not particularly worried about getting a really, really high percentage. On your spirit run, you can play with this. So I'm measuring 32 degrees in the boiler. That's heating up to boil. The maximum heating that this still head can handle is 2,500 watts. Once I get it up to temperature and it starts to boil and spirit starts to come out, I'll be turning this down to 2,000, but we'll come to that in a second. All right, so to begin with, I'm just gonna be collecting into this. This is the distiller's parrot. You do not need one of these, but it is useful to figure out the percentage that your alcohol is coming off your still. So your alcoholometer goes into this device. It allows you to measure the alcohol as it runs through the still. Some people say that this causes smearing, but properly managed, it doesn't. You just need to empty it between cuts. So our still head's about to come up to temperature. We've got 47.8, 48 degrees. The alarm's about to go off, which means that we're about to collect spirit. Lift this slightly so we can see it. I'm actually going to turn the water on, and I can pretty much put that on full if I wanted to, because it's not going to let any more through the head than the flow restriction will allow. So essentially what's happening in the still head is there's a coil of tubing, and it acts as essentially a deflagnator. Cools the still head and causes the liquid to drop down into a collection cup that then feeds this tube coming down, and that's restricted by the hole in this little fitting here. This is the temperature at the head. All right, we're starting to get a bit of a stream going here. Have a look at that. How good. So we've got an unbroken stream going into our parrot, which is fantastic. And you can see our alkalometers rising now. This is going to give us an alcohol reading. Should give us an idea of what we'll be collecting it at. It's at about 92%, which is quite impressive for still that I had to do very little management of at all. So all I did was turn the water on and put the boiler on an appropriate wattage, which was 2000 watts, and you're producing a spirit at, and this is the 4-shot, so I can probably do a bit better later. That's at 86.3. Right now I'm just going to empty out this parrot because this is going to be our 4-shot, about 150 mils of what I'm going to call 4-shot. Okay, so our spirit collecting is coming along rather nicely. It's coming out very hot, but that's because this doesn't have any cooling on the spirit collection. It's only cooling and dropping the spirit below 78 degrees Celsius and then catching the condensate, and that condensate is quite hot. You may get a little bit of evaporation off this style of still from here, but you could just run it into a container that's going to essentially capture all of that. For instance, you could just have it run through a small hole on a lid. I'm just going to let this cool down for a second, and we're going to take that alcohol percentage from this point in the run. So 92%. Like, that's actually quite high for a really cheap still. It's quite impressive, especially considering some of the effort that you go into in the stills that we will be looking at a little bit later in the video. This is a really great option for those people that don't have a lot of spare time and just want a nice neutral spirit product. And we can double distill this and polish it through carbon, and you'll get a really nice clean spirit if you go to the effort of clearing your wash properly and not fermenting too high of a percentage, and going to the effort of carbon filtering it at the end properly, which we're going to cover. So I'm going to let this run and we'll see how much we collect. Okay, so color me impressed. We actually got 4.5 liters of 90% alcohol, 89.6% alcohol from our 45 litre wash that we had in this still. There was no management of the still head needed whatsoever. In fact, I went to the shops while I had this running. Very impressive, and a really good option for the hobbyists that just want vodka or a nice neutral spirit where they put a bit more effort into the peripheries, like the wash and the polishing afterwards, just to get rid of any extra flavor that comes through from the wash. So now I want to do another stripping run to get bulk amounts of alcohol for our last spirit run. And this time I want to use my 100 litre still with a copper bubble plate still arrangement. So let's do that. So for this fermenter, I did the exact same steps as the first two fermentations, essentially doubling it to achieve 100 litres in this blue fermenter. So we're just going to add that into our still. The boiler that I'm using here is the Brewzilla 100 litre G4. You can get these smaller. They come in 65 and 35 litres as well. This boiler has 6,600 watts of elements, and they are able to be turned on at 2,200, 4,400 and 6,600. I'm just going to fill this up. And at the bottom you can see it's actually got a conical bottom with a pump. So once you're done distilling, you can just turn on the pump and drain the entire still. We're also going to throw in just a knob of butter, and this is going to act as a distilling conditioner to stop the wash puking as it boils. So it essentially breaks the surface tension on the top of the water so that, and you can see there how it's working against those bubbles on that side versus over this side, and it's just breaking the bubbles surface tension with the oil that it's adding to the top of the wash. Okay, so I've filled the still to about 90 liters. That's gonna give me a little bit of headroom so that if we do have a rolling boil, it gives the bubbles time to dissipate before it pukes. It shouldn't puke, I've got that butter in there, but we're just being a little bit careful. We're gonna switch the boil on actually, start heating this solution. Now I've got this set to 4400 watts, which is gonna heat quite fast. We can now build the still head. For my still, which is the modular PolyPhoenix, we're going to be running it in a bubble plate setup. So I'm gonna set the still head up with the Pro Distillation lid, and to the top of our Pro Distillation lid, we're going to adapt down from a 4-inch triclover to a 3-inch triclover, and we're gonna add in these. These are our bubble plate sections, and they just fit in between our PolyPhoenix parts, like so. For our first section, we're actually going to add in a little U, and that is going to create a liquid level in the base bubble plate. This is going to also add copper into our still head, which is good for collecting nasties. So we're just going to add that on. So this is our first bubble plate, and we're going to repeat that as many times as you like for as many bubble plates as you like. And we'll just add on our triclovers to seal all these sections. So here I have our Liedberg condenser. It's a single barrel shotgun condenser because, you know, shotguns do come in single barrel configurations. And we're just going to attach that. And to the top, we're going to add this. This is a deflegmator. It's called the Hammerhead, and I bloody love it. It is one of the coolest looking deflegs that I've ever seen. That is going to give us control over our cooling to counteract the heating at the bottom. Okay, so the way that we're going to run the cooling for this system is we come in at the exit of our spirit and we work our way up and through our defleg and then out to our exit. And it's all controlled with the ball valve here. And the vapor path in the still runs up through the bubble plates and then out our Liedberg into our collection container. All of our condensation happens up here and allows us to balance the entire column with our defleg. This is where the vapor path exits the still. So this is where I also have my thermometer going into the still head, as you can see here. So being about 90 liters of wash at about 13.5%, I expect to get about 10, 11 liters of 90-something% alcohol out of this. So I need a container that's able to capture that much liquid. And I'm just gonna be collecting into this. This is a 22-liter stainless steel milk jug. All right, so we're now coming up to temperature. At the top we have 33.3, in the middle we have 53.7, and at the bottom we have 73.8 degrees Celsius. And you can see there, those are our number values. And this is a really useful way of visualizing what's happening within the still. All right, we're at 80 degrees down the bottom and we're at 53 degrees at the top. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn my cooling of my still on by just turning this. There we go. And we can see here, we're actually starting to get drips of condensate. The drips of condensate coming off the top of our hammerhead. Bubble plates are starting to bubble, especially the top. It looks like we're getting a nice balance. Deflag is working. You can see liquid condensing and falling back down. We've got liquid coming into our parrot as well. This parrot is about to overflow into our first collection. So as you can see there, there it is, our first collection. We've got a really nice stream of liquid coming out. Looks like about 90%. What's the temperature of that? Okay, good temperature too. So that's coming out about 90% and at about 35 degrees. All right, so I just turned the boiler down to 2200 watts and that's what we're gonna be running it at. I've collected about 200 mils. I'm going to empty out the parrot like this, close it back up, and we're gonna start collecting actual spirit. Okay, I've got the still to where I'm very comfortable with it. All of our bubble plates are balanced really well. You've got a really nice, consistent bubbling action. And the temperature of the alcohol exiting is about 27.8 degrees Celsius, which is acceptable because it's the middle of summer and my water going in is probably about that temperature. I have it very well balanced at the moment. I've changed the configuration a little bit because I like to be able to see it going into the parrot. It's a very high percentage. Looks to be about 94%. As you can see, 94% at the meniscus. We've got a really nice flow coming down from the deflag and all of our bubble plates pretty well balanced. We've got about 10 liters. We're sitting at about 84.6%. Smells like we're starting to get some off flavors come through. So I'm gonna shut this distill down. I'm pretty happy with what we've collected today and we can add it to our other runs. I'm now rebuilding this still without any plates at all. We are going to pack it full of, this is SPP. SPP stands for Spiral Prismatic Packing. It looks like this. It is prismatic spiral packing. It has an extremely large surface area. So I'm just going to have a single long column, and at the base of that column, a 3-inch triclover seal with a sieve, a mesh, at the bottom. That's just going to sit in there like that, and I can start building my pieces. And I'm just going to fill this up with our packing. So one bag gets just a bit more than one section. We need one more. This is 1 whole meter of spiral prismatic packing. That's pretty bloody cool. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections. That is equivalent to 20 bubble caps. That is pretty bloody cool. Okay, and up the top here, we're going to put on our undertaker. Now, this is going to allow us to collect liquid out of the still as well as vapor out of the still. And this is just going to go underneath our hammerhead, which is going to go at the top. Our silicone collector goes in the top. This is going to drop the liquid down onto our liquid collection. I've got a 1.5-inch triclover, which is going to allow me to connect my Liedberg condenser. All right, so to the top of our Liedberg, we're just going to put in this thermometer piece, and I'm going to measure the temperature coming out of the top here. So this is for the spirit run. I'm just gonna add into this boiler all of my stripping runs. So I've got the one we just did. So this is actually at like 85%. So I'm just gonna water it down once it's in the boiler. There we go, 1. This is at 40%. I've just been storing it, so I'll add that in. This is another lot at 40%. So I'm just gonna add that in as well. We're up to 55 liters at 45%. And this is just plain water. So I'm just gonna water that down because I don't want to boil this dry. There we go. It's looking like we're about 35% in the boiler and we've got 70 liters. So I'll be looking to get 35 at 70. So that's 24 liters of alcohol that's in there, which is 70 times 0.35. We'll be looking at about 30 liters come out of this still if we get it at a high percentage, maybe even a little less. So I'll need a 30-liter collection. So I'm gonna start this up and get the boil happening, and we'll come back and run the still. It's running now at 4,400 watts, and I'm gonna set an alarm for this thermometer for 50 degrees so that it will tell me when the temperature starts rising through the still, and then I can start to manage my water. I'm gonna do my best to explain what's going on with the configuration of this still. At the bottom we have a mesh grate which is holding in 1 meter of SPP, or spiral prismatic packing. That is going to be our reflux chamber essentially. So the vapor is going to rise up through the column and it's going to reflux continuously. So it's going to condensate, form liquid, and then re-evaporate and then continue. And it's going to reflux all the way up the column. 1 meter of SPP is essentially equivalent to 20 bubble plates. So we're getting 20 bubble plates worth of reflux In our column, I've got thermometers in various points across the still. So at the base, in the middle, at the top where the vapor path runs into our Liedberg or shotgun. I've also got a temperature sensor at the top of the shotgun as well. This is our deflagnator at the top. So the cooling path actually runs through the base of our shotgun, up, out of the shotgun, then into our deflag and out the exit. The exit is where I control the water path. Okay, so how does the spirit get caught? So the deflag will cause reflux at the very top. It will rain down onto this section here. This is called the undertaker. What it does is it gives you a dual collection point. So you have a collection point which is for the liquid collection. So you can actually capture the reflux off the deflag above and it will travel down this. This is the liquid pathway and you can just have it run into your parrot like so, or you can capture the vapor pathway, which is this shotgun here. There are multiple ways that you can set up this arrangement. The shotgun will recondense the vapor coming out of this chamber here, or you can use the vapor that's recondensed by the deflag and draw out of your liquid pathway here. Now, if I were to do this again, I'd actually have the still reconfigured so that the vapor path entered into the top of my Liedberg and the liquid path entered into the side, so that you're getting the cooling on both the vapor path as well as the liquid path, because my liquid path was coming out a little bit too hot for my liking, and this would just allow you to collect both vapor and liquid at the same time, speeding up the distillation process and not taking as much power in the long run. I'm currently running this setup without any water running through it. We're at 85 degrees on the boiler and we're rising in the column fast. We're at 84 degrees here, 77 here, 32 here. So you can kind of see, you can visualize how the temperature's rising up the still with these temperature points. And I'll just give you a quick visualization here. We go from bottom, which is 4, all the way up to the top. And you can see that all of our temperatures are rising now. And we've actually started collecting spirit, which I did not realize. Okay, so I'm gonna have to turn this water on. We're capturing spirit really bloody fast. We're at 84 degrees up the top. Oh my God, we're at almost 95%. That is crazy, that is a good percentage. Okay, so we've collected about 600 ml of foreshort, and we're gonna start collecting into our other. But first, empty a parrot. To empty the parrot, we just undo this. And that allows us to switch out our containers as well without breaking the flow. So, like so. And when that rises, the meniscus will break and we'll have our flow again. So there it is. We're about 90% now. It's about 30 degrees coming out, which is fine because it's 28 degrees today. So it's only 2 degrees above ambient, and for the Fahrenheit people, that's 86.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Percentage-wise, pretty much exactly 90% coming off. I'm hoping to push that up a bit. All right, I am extremely excited to report that we are getting a very, very high alcohol reading off this. We are running at 94%. And I'm hoping I can push that even higher. I'd like to get it to 96, which is ASIO, but 94 is pretty bloody good. I'm pretty bloody happy with that. At this point, I'll just show you what the still's doing. It is just perfectly balanced at the moment. We've got the reflux coming off our deflag, so you can see there, it's just running straight down. We could be collecting liquid here if we wanted, and it's just refluxing. It's just causing reflux all up and down the column. I don't even know if we can see in there, but you can see the liquid running down various parts of the still, and this is just causing reflux all the way up and down the still with all of that surface area in that reflux column with all that SPP. This is how much we've got. It's a really clean smell. Okay, so this is kind of crazy. I just took an alcohol reading of like this. 94.5. I'm actually kind of keen to see what the alcohol coming out of our still is. Oh my God. That is quite high. That's almost azeotrope. 95.5. That's almost like the most you can possibly get out of a still. 95.5. Have a look at that. That is crazy. Like, this is working absolutely perfectly. We're just gonna keep going. One more time, just for good measure. Here we go. 95.5. That's crazy. That's 0.5 off azeotrope. Getting that 0.5, that's gonna be very hard. This is amazing. This is an incredible still. So we've hit the alarms for all of them. We've got 90 degrees on the two bottom ones, and you can actually see this is what water condensation looks like. We're shutting this down right now. We've now collected all of our spirit run, and we have a really clean spirit. I am very happy with the way that the still performed. I can't believe I got it almost to azeotrope. I'm quite excited to see how this tastes after we polish it. So to polish, we need activated carbon. And I will be running it through this. This is my over-the-top carbon filtration system. It is a 50-litre keg with a hole cut in the bottom. On the top, or now the base of the keg, is a 4-inch triclover that goes down into a 2-inch triclover, then into this 2-inch section. At the base, we have a couple of fittings that get it down to this duo-type fitting, and that then controls our flow of liquid. This is overkill for most people. There are a lot of different carbon filtration systems that you can use, ranging from charcoal pucks that the liquid runs through. For years, I got away with this. This is like I think it's Still Spirits branded. This is a 5-litre stainless steel, and they sort of just unscrew and have like a fine mesh in the bottom and a drip control. There are plenty of these on the market. Now, personally, I prefer the type that you filter through. You can definitely just get away with dumping carbon into your spirit and leaving it for an amount of time. That will perform a similar job of polishing the spirit. My preference is obviously filtering it through, because you're having the carbon interact with all of the spirit, because it all has to pass through. So I'll just quickly show you what this looks like internally. You have your carbon. The beauty of this is you can assemble one of these from disparate parts. A 2-inch triclover section, a couple of triclover clamps, and this is a 2-inch to screw fitting, and then you just adapt a tap to the screw fitting. At the base, you actually have a 2-inch sieve triclover seal. So you pop that onto the base, triclover this up, and you have a filter at the bottom essentially that allows the liquid to go through, but not your activated carbon. So this is your activated carbon, and you just pour that in. Now, the amount of activated carbon that you're going to require will depend on how much liquid you're running through it. So there is our carbon filter, and you would add some kind of reservoir on top of this to feed down into it. So we have our seal, and that just sits up onto and screws up. All right, so here I have enough hot water to fully immerse our activated carbon. Boiling hot water. We're gonna run that hot water through because we wanna get all of the carbon cloudiness. We wanna get that all out of our carbon before we start to run spirit through it. So you might need to run a couple of kettles through it. That's looking pretty bloody good. The reason we run hot water through is because the hot water causes the air in the activated carbon to expand and exit the carbon, the pores in the carbon. And we want that air to exit because we want the water and alcohol to enter into the carbon and be polished by it. The micropores in the carbon take away anything larger than an ethanol or a water molecule. So as your spirit travels through the column of charcoal, any larger particles will get caught in it, and that's how it's polished. It's now time to add in our spirit. So I'm actually adding in my water first, and then I'll add in my alcohol, because I don't want the 90%, 95% alcohol touching the carbon first. I want the alcohol and water to mix. So water and then alcohol. Give it a bit of stir. I'm just gonna take a quick alcohol reading. Hopefully that'll be enough. So we're at about 42%, which is perfect. So to catch our alcohol as we run it through our carbon filter, we need something that's at least as large as the reservoir above the carbon filter, because you don't want to forget this and then just have it run everywhere. So this is a 60-litre fermenter, which is more than enough to catch the 45 litres that's in this 50-litre keg. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to run it at the slowest rate possible. You want this granulated activated carbon to be in contact with the alcohol for the longest period of time possible. The way that I usually run it is 1 or 2 drips per second. So coming from experience, the first thing you want to check is that that tap is closed because you've probably got a clean empty fermenter lying around and that tap is more than likely open from cleaning. We are now going to open this ball valve up. And this is coming out hot, but that's fine because the water in there is just going to mix with the rest of our water and become part of the spirit. So initially this is just going to be water, but we're not going to worry about that at all. There is only a tiny bit of water compared to the entire volume. So we might lose 1% or 2, but that's fine because we're at 42.5. I really want to have it at 40. That is the rate that I'm going to be running it. I'm not in any rush. I just want a really nice, clean, finished product. And that is what this drip rate is going to give us. So there we are. That is our final neutral spirit. This is going to be the most boring taste test ever because we really don't want it to taste like anything at all. This is meant to be a neutral spirit, a clean, flavorless base that you build complex flavors on if you're, say, making a flavored vodka or gin. Or, in the case of vodka, it's meant to not taste like anything really at all. All I should be getting here is ethanol and water. Let's give that a little crack. Yep. It's definitely neutral spirit. There's nothing's come through the wash. It's actually just a really nice, clean, basic spirit. Ethanol flavored, is that a thing? It's really clean. That's all I could have asked for. And this is gonna give us a brilliant, clean slate to jump into a bunch of exciting videos. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of All the Gear, and I hope I've left you with some ideas. Happy distilling, and I'll see you next time on All the Gear.